The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for the third time in a standard week. Ambassador Zextar of the Vrillian Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes, his four eyes scanning the holographic displays that showed the devastation across 17 systems. The images were difficult to process. Entire fleets reduced to scrap metal, planetary defense grids torn apart like paper, and military installations that had stood for centuries now nothing but craters. "The Devourer has consumed the third armada of Kepler Prime," announced High Chancellor Vorth, her crystalline voice echoing through the chamber. "Casualties exceed 2 million beings. The beast shows no signs of slowing." The assembled delegates murmured in their various languages, a cacophony of fear that had become all too familiar. The creature they called the Devourer had emerged from the void between galaxies 3 months ago, a living ship the size of a moon, with tendrils that could slice through quantum shielding and a maw that seemed to process matter into pure energy. It moved with purpose, systematically destroying military targets while leaving civilian populations largely untouched, as if it were studying them. "The Terran representative wishes to speak," Vorth announced, her tone carrying barely concealed disdain. The chamber fell silent as Dr. Sarah Chen stepped forward from the human delegation. At barely 1.6 meters tall, she looked insignificant among the towering Vrillian warriors, the gas-formed Netherians, and the insectoid Klaxi. But Ambassador Zextar had learned not to underestimate humans during his time on the Council. Their species had a disturbing tendency to approach problems from angles that defied conventional wisdom. "Thank you, High Chancellor," Dr. Chen said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. "I've been studying the behavioral patterns of the entity you call the Devourer for the past 6 weeks. And what has your primitive species concluded?" sneered General Thrak of the Hegemony, his scales bristling with contempt. Dr. Chen smiled, an expression that always made Zextar's skin crawl when humans displayed it. "That you're all going about this completely wrong." The chamber erupted in outrage. Delegates demanded to know how a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel could presume to lecture civilizations that had been spacefaring for millennia. "The Devourer isn't a weapon," Dr. Chen continued calmly. "It's not even malicious. It's exhibiting classic territorial behavior combined with resource protection patterns. Every military force you send reads as a threat to its perceived territory. The more aggressive your response, the more aggressive it becomes." "Nonsense," General Thrak spat. "It has destroyed 17 fleets." "Because you keep sending them," Dr. Chen replied. "Look at the data objectively. It only attacks when military vessels enter what it considers its space. It doesn't pursue fleeing ships beyond a certain perimeter. It's not hunting, it's defending." Ambassador Zextar found himself leaning forward despite his skepticism. The human female was presenting information with the same clinical detachment his species used for scientific analysis. Furthermore, Dr. Chen continued, activating a holographic display. "Examination of the wreckage patterns suggests the Devourer is actually trying to minimize unnecessary destruction. These aren't random attacks, they're surgical strikes designed to disable threats while preserving salvageable materials." "Your point?" Chancellor Vorth inquired, her patience clearly wearing thin. Dr. Chen's smile widened. "I think it's lonely." The silence that followed was deafening. Several delegates began speaking at once, their voices rising in pitch and volume. Ambassador Zextar noticed that General Thrak's hand had moved to his sidearm. "The behavioral patterns match those of highly intelligent social creatures separated from their kind," Dr. Chen explained. "The territoriality, the defensive posturing, the way it seems to study civilian populations without harming them. It's trying to understand us because it wants contact, but it doesn't know how to communicate safely." "You're suggesting we attempt to communicate with a creature that has killed millions?" Chancellor Vorth's voice carried a note of disbelief. "I'm suggesting we try a different approach before it kills millions more," Dr. Chen replied. "The current strategy clearly isn't working." Ambassador Zextar stood, drawing attention from the heated debates breaking out across the chamber. "Dr. Chen, What specifically are you proposing? The human turned to face him directly. I want to approach it alone in an unarmed vessel and attempt first contact. The chamber exploded again. This time, General Thrak did draw his weapon, though he was quickly restrained by his own guards. That's suicide, declared Admiral Korath, of the Federated Worlds. Maybe, Dr. Chen acknowledged, but it's suicide with a purpose. If I'm right and it's simply trying to establish communication protocols, then a non-threatening approach might work. If I'm wrong, she shrugged. Well, one dead human is better than another dead armada. Ambassador Zexitar felt something he rarely experienced. Respect for a species he'd previously considered crude and impulsive. The human wasn't being reckless. She was being logical in a way that transcended conventional military thinking. And if it does respond positively? He asked. What then? Dr. Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Then we figure out what it wants. Maybe it's lost. Maybe it's looking for others of its kind. Maybe it just wants to belong somewhere. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a note of wonder. Have you ever considered that something that powerful might just need a friend? The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything the assembled civilizations believed about power, territory, and the nature of conflict itself. Ambassador Zexitar found himself thinking about his own species' first contact protocols, about the assumptions they made about beings unlike themselves. Perhaps the humans, in their peculiar way of seeing the universe, had identified something the rest of them had missed. Very well, Chancellor Vorth announced after a long moment of consideration. Dr. Chen, you have the Council's permission to attempt your unconventional approach. May your gods have mercy on us all. As the session adjourned and delegates filed out in heated discussions, Ambassador Zexitar approached the human scientist. Dr. Chen, he said quietly, I find myself curious about something. She looked up at him expectantly. If you succeed in establishing communication with this creature, what will you ask it first? Dr. Chen's smile returned, but this time it carried warmth instead of that unsettling human confidence. I'm going to ask if it wants to come home with us. Ambassador Zexitar spent the rest of the evening reconsidering everything he thought he knew about the human approach to the universe.